signs of a struggle. The beads from the 2 rosaries she was wearing that night strewn everywhere.
Allegedly throwing her off the balcony of her Hollywood Hills apartment. The suspect was arrested today around 4:30 p.m. They're hopeful that her killer will have to answer for the crime.
A bright and motivated therapist making a name for herself in Hollywood. An obsessive ex-boyfriend whom she had been avoiding for years. What happened when they inadvertently crossed paths at a red carpet event? Someone would end up dead. I'm Dr. Tophat Shadow, and this is The Shadow Self. On the late evening of February 14th, 2020, 38-year-old Dr. Amie Harwick had just gotten home from attending a burlesque performance at the Globe Theatre in downtown Los Angeles, hosted by her friend, Miss Tosh. Always fashionable, Amie wore a velvet dress, black leather jacket, and a rosary necklace, a necklace that would later become an item of great importance to the police. Following the performance, Amie made her way through the crowd of partygoers to congratulate the performers. Miss Tosh invited Amie to join them at an after-party, but she politely declined, deciding instead to wind down the evening by meeting some friends for tea at the nearby Nomad Hotel. She arrived at the Nomad at around 10:30 p.m. The mood was jovial, and as Amie engaged the group with her quick wit and magnetic personality, she brought smiles to their faces, as was often the case. She stayed until a few minutes past midnight before bidding her friends farewell and making the 20-minute drive back to her Tudor-style home in the Hollywood Hills. Nestled in a private tree-lined cul-de-sac, Amie's neighborhood was quiet and safe. Amie pulled into her driveway, sitting in her car for several minutes while she texted with friends. "Send me pics on the green couch," she requested from a girlfriend who'd been with her earlier that evening. Amie then texted her close friend Robert Koshland in order to discuss an upcoming trip to the UK that they had been planning for some time. Robert recommended that when they go, they should visit a restaurant in Edinburgh which he had heard good things about. He sent her pictures of the place. "Looks cool," Amie replied enthusiastically. She bid him adieu and signed off, unaware of the grim fact that in a few seconds she would be fighting for her survival. Amie made her way into the house. She climbed the stairs to her bedroom on the 3rd floor. Her roommate, who occupied the bedroom 2 stories below on the 1st floor, was sound asleep. The house was dark and quiet. Just another end to a Friday evening, it seemed. But Amie was not alone. A large man dressed in black with a long coat and baseball cap had been lying in wait for hours. As she entered her room, 5'4", 118-pound, Amie was viciously attacked. She screamed, loud enough to wake her roommate from his slumber. He yelled upstairs to her, but only heard more commotion. Frantic, he jumped out of bed to look for his phone before hearing what he described as the thud of bodies hitting the floor. More screams followed, but this time they were muffled, as if someone was putting their hands over Amie's mouth. Unable to find his phone, Amie's roommate scrambled out of the house and scaled a fence, banging on the neighbor's door, pleading for help. But no one answered. He ran across the street to bang on the door of another home, but again, no answer. He was in a panic, knowing that the longer it took to find help, the worse things would become for Amie. Finally, he spotted someone walking with a phone in their hand, and he urged them to call the police. It was now 14 minutes past 1 in the morning. The police, who happened to be nearby, arrived within 2 minutes.
"Calm down. Other than your roommate, is there anybody else inside the house?"
I don't know. Dude, I heard screaming. I don't know if that guy had a gun or a knife. I came running I couldn't find my phone.
After some initial questioning, they began a search of the property. Soon, one of them found Amie. She was not in her bedroom, however. She was lying motionless in the courtyard, 20 feet below her bedroom balcony. Her injuries were severe, with head trauma and deep markings around her neck, indicating that she had been strangled before falling from the balcony. Still breathing, she was rushed to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, but tragically, at 3:26 a.m., 38-year-old Amie Harwick was pronounced dead. Adopted as a child, Amie Harwick had grown up in a small Pennsylvania town called Lansdale. As often is the case, she developed a desire to move out of town and discover what lay ahead for her in the world. After graduating from North Penn High School, she began making plans. Amie didn't have a lot of money or connections, so she would have to start from scratch and use her ambition and intelligence to accomplish her goals. Amie settled in Los Angeles in 2001. She enrolled in California Polytechnic State University, pursuing a degree in psychology while working odd jobs such as go-go dancer, bartender, model, and even performing as a fire eater in order to pay her way through college. It was an uphill battle, but her intelligence, drive, and desire to make something of herself would eventually pay off. With the looks of a movie star, an outgoing personality, and razor-sharp intellect, it was no surprise that Amie would develop a large network of friends and colleagues. Her dating life was equally as interesting, as it is rumored to have included singer Marilyn Manson and drummer Dave Navarro of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Indeed, she possessed the gift of magnetism, and people wanted to be around her. One such person was a man named Gareth Pursehouse, whom Amie met in 2010. Gareth was a deviation from the type of men Amie typically dated. A software engineer by trade, he also took side gigs as a photographer while making a few floundering attempts to break into the comedy scene.
I think he froze. So,
At 6'4", 230 pounds, he was a large bloke, looming nearly a foot taller and more than 100 pounds heavier than Amie. He certainly looked the part of a command the audience type of guy. But Amie's friends described him as goofy and awkward and were a bit surprised that she would choose to date him. A straight-laced guy who seemed to want to be wild and spontaneous, but instead just came across as, well, awkward.
Okay, Game of Thrones, first season. The brother and sister are up in the castle, and then the kid sees him through the window, and the brother has to go and throw the kid off and to kill him. And even though it's evil, I feel kind of bad for the brother because even though he doesn't want to do it, his sister insisted.
Her friend Grace said, "It was very obvious when I met him that he was taken by her, always taking pictures of her." She theorized that perhaps Amie was looking for a nice guy who wasn't going to break her heart or cheat on her, and so she gave it a shot. But Amie's close friend Robert painted a different story. He said Amie told him that Gareth had physically assaulted her on more than one occasion, striking her and even bashing her head against the floor. According to Robert, Gareth would then immediately tell Amie how sorry he was and how much he loved her. Nonetheless, Amie tried to make it work. A year and a half would go by, but things didn't change. And at the urging of friends, Amie finally ended her relationship with Gareth. Gareth, however, did not take the breakup well. He began constantly asking Amie's friends for her whereabouts, wanting to know who she was with and what she was up to. He would even send them sappy love songs and ask them to forward them to Amie on his behalf. But this was to no avail. Amie had moved on. Not only had she moved on, but on January 11th, 2012, she filed a restraining order against Gareth after an incident in which he yanked her out of a car, tossing her belongings in the street and causing her to get a bloody nose. After serving Gareth with the restraining order, it was clear to Amie that going forward she would need to constantly look over her shoulder. Gareth was dangerous. This would not deter her, however. She would persevere, continuing to pursue her goals and move on with her life. One evening, Amie, who was still working side gigs to pay for her education, was hired to work as a bartender for a star-studded Hollywood party. The room was filled with Hollywood elite, but one man took a particular interest in her. His name was Drew Carey, the comedian who was known for hosting the game show The Price is Right. Drew approached her, and the two of them struck up a conversation, agreeing to go on a date later in the week. They ended up going to Disneyland together and had an amazing time. Drew was smitten with her. He went to work the next day and told everyone on set about this wonderful woman whom he had met. Amie fell for Drew as well. They would begin spending more time together, and gossip columns soon caught wind of the romance, posting pictures and articles about them and speculating on their relationship. Amie wasn't used to such a bright spotlight, and she expressed to Drew at times that she wished he wasn't famous. Drew understood this, but alas, there was nothing they could do to change that. A few months later, Drew would bring Amie on stage with him and introduce her to the world as his fiancée.
Here's your host, Drew Carey!
I'd like to introduce you to my brand new lovely fiancée, Amie. How you doing, Amie?
Their bond was tight. However, they would encounter some problems in their relationship. Problems which Drew did not want to share with the public. Things would not last, and Amie and Drew would have an amicable breakup. They remained on good terms, but Amie was heartbroken. As she always did, however, Amie would keep moving forward. She gained her master's degree in clinical psychology from Pepperdine University and her doctorate of human sexuality from the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality. She became a licensed marriage and sex therapist and opened up a thriving practice in West Hollywood, in which she would work with clients on everything from discussing relationship challenges to opening up about personal sexual issues such as deep-seated shame or feelings of rejection. She would become a strong advocate for women's rights and would work with many women whom she helped recover from trauma due to intimate partner abuse. She appeared on podcasts, morning shows, women's seminars, and even published a successful book entitled The New Sex Bible for Women. Indeed, it was a given that Amie's star was meant to shine bright, and she soon found herself in a very happy place in life. But she was not without worry. Years had passed since she broke up with Gareth, but she always had the feeling that he was still watching her from afar. On one occasion, nearly 4 years after the breakup, Amie told her friend Robert that someone had broken into her house and taken only her photo albums and the hard drive from her computer. Although she couldn't prove it, she was certain it was Gareth. She had also been receiving derogatory comments and scathing reviews about her practice online, which she believed were posted anonymously by Gareth. While the restraining order had kept him at a physical distance, it seemed it could not stop him from keeping tabs on her whereabouts and posting anonymously online. It had now been almost a decade since Amie broke things off with Gareth. She had accomplished a great deal in that time, and despite the unwarranted, scathing reviews of her practice, she had become a notable and well-respected Hollywood therapist. She was invited to attend a red carpet event called X-Biz, which was an annual award show for people involved in the adult film industry. Unbeknownst to her, Gareth Pursehouse had also been invited to the event, but as a photographer, not a guest. His job was to snap pictures of guests as they walked the red carpet. Gareth began snapping away as guests filed in, but he stopped short when he noticed one particular attendee. Watching as Amie was enthusiastically greeted by other guests and interviewed by reporters, Gareth began seething with anger. Overcome with emotion, his camera fell to his side. He began screaming at the top of his lungs. Oblivious to the crowd of startled onlookers, Gareth then sobbed uncontrollably. He fell to the ground and curled up in a fetal position, shaking violently as if he was being electrocuted. Another guest, fellow therapist and friend, Dr. Hernando Chavez, recounts that Gareth then yelled, "You ruined my life, bitch!" After the event, Amie's friend Robert recounts that Amie pulled Gareth aside and spent nearly an hour speaking with him privately, but of course, still within view of security. She could have completely ignored Gareth, but according to Robert, Amie had gone into therapist mode, attempting to calm him down and neutralize the situation. In an email to herself regarding what they had discussed, Amie would recount the following. "I didn't think he was going to attack me in that moment, but this clearly showed me how obsessed he was. He told me that he thinks about me every day, and every day he cries. He told me he lost his job when we broke up because he couldn't work. He told me that no matter what he did, he couldn't stop obsessing over me," she continued. "He recited text messages that I had sent from this time frame. About 9 years ago, he recited the date, who they were to, and exactly what was said, word for word. I couldn't believe it. I was very scared. He said he wasn't able to move on. He said he thinks about me constantly. I'm pretty nervous that I'm more on his radar now," she added. "It terrifies me that he's been obsessed with me for 9 years, thinks about me every day, can't move on, cries and throws tantrums in this way. He's focused on harming me." Amie's concerns were absolutely warranted. Her friend Robert stated that she told him, "If anything ever happens to me, it's him." A couple weeks later, Amie would call her parents with an explicit request. She would tell them that should she die unexpectedly, she wanted an open casket funeral and an elaborate headstone. A strange request in their minds, coming from someone so young and vivacious. Amie discussed with another friend her plans to increase security at her home in the Hollywood Hills, but it seems she did not go through with it. Then, on February 13th, 2020, the day before Valentine's, Amie sent a text to her former fiancé, Drew Carey. "I would love to get together with you and talk." Having not heard from her in a while, Drew was surprised to see her name show up on his phone. He responded, "Yeah, I would love to do that. I love you." However, this would not materialize. Only days later, Amie's friend Robert would deliver the heartbreaking news to Drew. Amie had been murdered. As detectives began their investigation, one name kept being mentioned: Gareth Pursehouse. He became their primary person of interest, and they were quickly able to track him down and arrest him for Amie's murder. They presented their findings to the judge, and the judge ruled that based on the substantial amount of evidence, Gareth should indeed stand trial for the crime. With his six-pack having gone into hiding, Gareth looked nearly unrecognizable. However, although this was a high-profile murder case, Gareth was granted bail. At $2 million, he put up 10% and was able to bond out. And to the dismay of Amie's loved ones, Gareth was released. Only a day later, however, Gareth would be rearrested. The police were able to upgrade the charges to include a special enhancement, adding lying in wait to the crime of murder, a crime that carries the punishment of death. The trial got underway, and in their opening statement, prosecutors showed a video from Amie's next-door neighbor, in which a ring camera captured a man who looked like Gareth, creeping around the home and even attempting to fiddle with the camera at one point. The footage is dated February 14th, 2020, at around 9 p.m., 4 hours before Amie took her fatal fall. They also show footage of the same man hours later running from the property at 1:11 a.m., only minutes after Amie's roommate was awakened by her screams. There were clear signs of a struggle, with Amie's rosary beads strewn across the bedroom floor. They then presented the jury with photos taken after Gareth's arrest, showing several fresh scratches and bruises on his arms, chest, and legs. But they weren't finished just yet. Perhaps more damning was when prosecutors told the jury that investigators found a syringe filled with a lethal dose of nicotine on Amie's balcony, and they found another syringe made by the same company in Gareth's apartment. After examining Amie's body, the medical examiner concluded that she died from blunt force trauma to the head and torso after falling from her balcony, and that the bruising around her neck showed signs of manual strangulation. They then stated that DNA samples collected from the doors and floorboards in Amie's room, as well as from under Amie's fingernails, matched Gareth's DNA. Following that, Amie's friend Robert took the stand and recounted the time when she told him, "If anything happens to me, he," meaning Gareth, "did it." Gareth's attorney, Evan Franzel, was not in the least bit fazed, however. He was well aware of the evidence against his client, and he argued that none of that evidence proves actual murder, and that even if the 6'4", 230-pound Gareth was indeed the intruder, he had simply gone there to have a chat with Amie. Franzel claimed that running into Amie at the red carpet event had sent Gareth into a deep fog of depression and made him feel that the only way he could get relief from that pain was to go and talk to her. He then broke into her house simply to talk. As for the syringe filled with a lethal dose of nicotine, well, Franzel said, Gareth's plan was not to use it on her, but rather to use it on himself after he talked with her. Perhaps, he said, that the 5'5", 118-pound Amie may have accidentally fallen over the ledge of the balcony while trying to get away from Gareth. Sure, Franzel, sure. He set a chain of motions into actions that led to her death, Franzel said. But Franzel argued that there was no evidence that proved a murder actually occurred, and that his client, Gareth Pursehouse, did not murder her. After insisting that Gareth was actually innocent, the defense rested their case. The jury deliberated, and not long after, on the 28th of September 2023, they came back with a verdict.
All right, you're looking live into the courtroom there in Los Angeles, and we now have a verdict. It was just read. Guilty, murder in the first degree. Gareth Pursehouse was just found guilty of murdering Amie Harwick. Of course, Amie Harwick is that famous Hollywood sex therapist.
As of the release of this video, a sentence has yet to be handed down. Given that California has imposed a moratorium on the death penalty, Gareth will likely avoid capital punishment. However, the probability of him ever tasting freedom is molecular at best. Time will soon tell. Amie Harwick was a shooting star. Bright, compassionate, and driven, she made a lasting and positive impact on those who knew her, and she helped a great many in dealing with their own personal struggles with partner abuse. Her tragic death cut short a life that would have undoubtedly led to helping many more. In each of us, there is a shadow, which represents the unconscious realm of one's psyche, while its conscious counterpart is represented by the ego. This can be harnessed as a driving force for success. However, if fueled by jealousy and unhealthy obsessions, the ego will become a poison that manifests a toxic mindset, conjuring up deeply repressed and negative aspects of one's shadow self. The mind will become clouded, intensifying a desire for control and possession, and that individual will begin to make irrational decisions that can lead to violence or even death. What are your thoughts on the case of Dr. Amie Harwick? Leave your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and then click subscribe. I've been your host, Dr. Tophat Shadow, and this is The Shadow Self.